Good afternoon, everyone. You know, well, my name is Dan Cox, I'm the Director of Broadcasting at WCWP. I was hoping one of my predecessors would be here by now, Bill Moser. That's why we're both waiting around. We'll be here eventually. You know, it never rains on this day, I've noticed. This is what, our third or fourth? Well, it's always worth that. There must be something about that. I think
flowers are blooming.
Flowers are blooming. We picked the right date, although it did get a little wintry the last couple of days. I want to welcome you all to the Tiller Center for the Performing Arts here in LA Post. I know when you went to school here, it was probably CWP Center or University, or any one of the other 3 or 4 names they had at this campus over the last 60 years. I'm going to play a short video, and then someone else will take over the reins. But thanks for coming today. I hope you have a good time.
WCWP. Where careers are born and memories are made. Today, we honor 4 of WCWP's finest. Bobby Guthenberg, Jeff Kroll, Leonard, and Mike Riccio. Welcome to the 2015 WCWP Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Now your host, WCWP alum and Hall of Famer, Bernie Bernard.
Great video, thank you. So welcome to the 4th Annual WCWP Hall of Fame ceremony as we induct the class of 2015. I'd like to acknowledge some of our other Hall of Fame members who are here. Let's see, Frank. Anybody else? We're waiting for promotion. He's here. Oh, there he is. I couldn't see you. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Right. As we induct our new members this year, we're going to keep it informal. Audience participation is welcome at any point. If you have a story or remark, if you want to razz somebody or tell an embarrassing anecdote, please come on up. It's all about having fun. So, this past week, 2 of my students were asked to pledge a fraternity on campus. They said that they really weren't sure they could divide their loyalties between the fraternity and WCWP. So I asked them, what are the advantages to joining the fraternity? And they said, well, they came up with lifelong friends, contacts for future careers, and camaraderie during the rest of their college years. I looked at them and said, duh, what do you think you have at WCWP? So I hope that I've influenced their decision a little bit, and that they decided to stay on for the station, because they're 2 members who really need. So I hope they are able to spend as much time as they've been spending. So we have been a social type of fraternity or sorority, not just a boys' club, right, girls? With an amazing alumni network. I'm happy to be part of it still. And to look here at some of my lifelong friends, because like a fraternity, we do have lifelong friends from the WCWP alumni. Thanks to the jobs and recommendations, Dan, Bill. And even if you don't go into broadcasting or media, or started there and found your path going in another direction, WCWP still taught us how to be responsible, how to get along, sometimes with difficulty, and prepared us for the real world. So, let's get this party started. I'd like to invite Bruce Leonard to come up and induct his old friend Jeff Kroll.
Bring the water, bring it.
Thank you.
I did have to make a cheat sheet. I don't know if I'll really need it, but
neither is mine.
okay, this guy sitting over here blue shirt next to the pretty lady in the pink. It's Dave Levy. Dave and I knew each other from high school. What I did not know is that Jeff and Dave knew each other from being real little. And after high school, Dave went to Hofstra. I went to Post. I got involved with WCWP, and he got involved with that station over there. But we used to play around, go on each other's shows, talk to each other constantly. He calls me, summer '71, I guess. Bruce, I got a guy. He's a good friend of mine. He's coming to Post. Can you take care of him? He wants to work at the radio station. Sure. We have a lounge in the back of the station where we used to have lunch all the time. I don't know exactly who was there that day, but we used to go to Fireside Elliott on Grove there. And it was either Moser, Everhart, could have been Frank, Ted. We were all sitting around eating. And the front door opens, and I hear some talk, and down the hall comes Dave, followed by something. I couldn't quite see him because he was like a stick figure. And Dave comes in. Bruce, this is my friend Jeff Kroll. We talked about him, fine. See ya. He left. He left. Jeff's standing there, deer in the headlights.
They drove me up, that's true. I had no way to go home after that.
Best move I ever made was befriending this guy. He was one of the biggest helps to me just learning my radio station. I've only been there for a few months. As everyone else discovered, whether it be Bill or Frank or Ted or anybody, whenever he got involved with something, and that's what this is for, the news department. I mean, you've got stories about that when Frank got you to do some news stuff. In the music area, we got involved with John Cummins, who was music director at the time. We were programming, doing music engineering, we were doing all that stuff. He just sucked it all up. And what we discovered is all he really wanted to do was some sports and maybe some news, and he ended up doing everything. Now he's coordinating the WCWP Alumni Association. The WCWP Homecoming Weekend is what Pat, of course, told me. It's an honor to induct my pal, Jeff Kroll, into the WCWP Hall of Fame.
Stand up for your pictures. All right. Mike, your picture.
Sure.
Just you?
Inducted me. Put the microphone down, Bruce, okay?
All right, 1, 2, 3. One more, okay. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was fun. Thanks.
Well, everybody's been saying.
I was afraid that Bruce wouldn't tell the truth. I don't know. Not that he's not truthful, it's just that stories get embellished around these things. But that is an absolute true story. I was dropped off. I had no idea. David was at Hofstra, and when I told him I was going to Post, he said he would introduce me to someone that could help me at the station. We both had the radio pump, so he was already working the Hofstra station. And so he took me out. Now this is before classes started that fall. I don't remember exactly what day, but it was before classes. And he did indeed. He introduced me to Bruce, and I do remember that I met Bill that day. Yeah, there were some others around. And he literally said, take good care of him, he'll do a good job for you, and he left. And he had driven me up there, I had no way to get home. So after the great tour and watching what was going on, I was kind of looking around for a ride. And Bruce lived down in the South Shore, so Roslyn's not that far out of the way, really. It's right off the highway. And we literally started a friendship that very day at WCWP, and it's lasted for 3.5 years. So that's pretty good. It's pretty good stuff. I am really honored to be here. This station, well, it's not, it's that building that's on the other side of this building. Means an awful lot to me. It's always meant a lot to me. And number one right at the top is I met Pat there. So that's really and then you go from there to the next level, and that's the lifelong friends. Bernie talked about that in your opening remarks. It really is true. Lifelong friends. It was our frat, and it's still our frat.
Pledging was tough.
What's going on over there? Alumni. When they say alumni are welcome, they're not kidding over there. You're not only welcome, they put you right back to work. So. That's nice, and I did indeed get a career out of that place. I was an 18-year-old kid who walked in, just I liked radio, I liked news and sports, as Bruce said, but I didn't want to do anything over there. But I ended up with a career thanks to that station. I chose to end that career after a number of years, but I learned everything right there. And I don't see any of the current students here, but whenever I run into them over at the station, I tell them that I really was in that spot as an 18-year-old. I knew nothing, I just was interested, and fortunately, if you're interested, they put you to work, and I got to do that. My one thing that we found out about this honor a number of months ago, what was it, September? We were officially told that the committee had voted us in. So you have a few months to think about it, and my one lament is that there's really only one level to this Hall of Fame. All of us that are now in there are on the same level. And frankly, I feel somewhat odd to be on the same level as a Bill Moser and our late friend Bill Eberhard and the like. Because to me, no matter what, they're here. And you can put me in the Hall of Fame all you want, I'm still just here. So, I don't know, I guess there'll never be two levels, but that's the way I see it. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but I didn't create the place, I just took advantage of the opportunities there. There are others like Bill who really had to set the thing in motion and set the things up, and they did all the electronics. There's another odd thing. Right now, there are 12 previous members of the Hall of Fame. All right, now 4 of us going in today. You could put another 100 in there, maybe 200. No one will be less technically inclined than I am. I will be the least technical person ever. This guy has set up more speakers and stereos for me, and I don't know how to do that stuff. I still don't know how to do any of that stuff. But I do. Bruce said I soaked it in. Was that your term? And that's true. And I just from repetitions, I would get to do stuff. I ended up getting a career out of that. But I don't actually understand 3/4 of how what I say gets on the radio. I really don't. I still don't know. And it's a lot of fun. I've had a lot of. It's just been a great place for me. I am truly honored. Frank DeLea is back there. Frank was inducted last year. And you said, I'm just paraphrasing, you said something about no one will ever be as proud as I am today to be a member of this Hall of Fame. I'm not challenging that statement. I'm not trying to top you in any way, but I can be pretty darn close to however proud you are. I'm right up there at the top. It means an awful lot to me. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone coming out today to be a part of this. Thank you very much.
Everybody stay put because we're going to reverse this thing. And Jeff is going to introduce that.
Before I knock this down, I'm just going to drop it off, all right? Thank you very much.
This is a bit different to have as good a friend as Bruce sit side by side and then have to turn around and induct him. So it's different. Also a handwritten note, but my handwriting is not nearly as nice as Bruce's. So, and then I left my glasses home, so I'm going to make it that much harder. Well, you already took away my opening story, so with my introduction, so you all know that part. One thing I wanted to mention was I noted immediately how much Bruce knew about the station. When you're 18, no, it's all right. When you're 18, you come into a place like that, and if you can think back to being that age, if you hang around with people that are 18, 19 years old, you think you're on a level, and then if you have seniors that were 21, 22, and maybe some that have just graduated, to you they're the old folks in the place. And I always admired what they did. They also taught me a lot. But I was immediately struck by how Bruce, who was basically my age, just a little bit older, already seemed to know everything about the place. And I got the sense that Bruce was the go-to guy. If you really wanted to know what was going on, Bruce was the guy. He knew everything. And so he taught me about news. They got me going pretty shortly thereafter. He became news director. And it was really good having your friend being the news director. Got you more shifts and stuff like that. And then Bruce worked in the music department, ran the music library, and worked on all the great contacts that the station maintained with the record companies. So I watched him do all this, and I was just in there. I followed him around. I've been thinking about it the last few days. I was like a puppy dog following him around. Wherever he went, I went. And I just started to learn everything about the station. I couldn't believe that anybody who really hadn't been there that long knew so much about what was going on. I mean, Bruce started in a place and there was immediately a shutdown, which I'm sure will come on, always does these things. The famous Steve Post era at the station, and so you lost some time, but then helped the station build back up and became a true pillar of getting that place going again and setting things in motion that became the standard that everybody followed for years and years to come. He was definitely one of the founders of everything there. He convinced me to become a board operator. He convinced me to become a disc jockey, which I really didn't want to do. I just wanted to do news and sports. That's it. And then on and on it went. And it seemed that when he handed off the news department, he handed that off to me. When he handed off Music Weekend, he handed that off to me. I just kept following in his footsteps. He set the path. He was the guy. He really was. In those days, you had to go through Bruce kind of to get things done. He had the nicer approach. We kind of played a two-part, we were known as, good cop, bad cop thing, and he was always a good cop. He worked with more students with audition tapes, and then once they were on, he would critique their shows. He was meticulous in his critiques. I was a little more rough with my critiques, but Bruce was always very patient with everybody and kept things going. He really was the guy who, at our level, the younger guys, the 18, 19-year-olds, was the pillar that everybody looked up to. And I followed him around here from day one, and I'm still with him today. And I'm very proud to call Bruce Leonard my friend, and I'm especially proud to be the first one to officially call him a Hall of Famer. Bruce Leonard, welcome to the WCWP.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Over here, Bruce. Justin.
One more behind there. Okay.
Justin, Bruce.
Yep, come over this way.
Okay.
All right.
You want someone?
I don't know.
Any
bidders?
So we're going to lose this? You guys want to hold on for this too? Thank you.
Anybody have any other comments they want to make or stories downtown?
Did you call me a killer?
Not anymore.
I'm concerned.
So, Bruce, can you keep this? No.
What's the word to you?
Tamara, I think.
Give it to Tamara?
Yeah.
She'll take it.
So, I'm Neil Marks, and kind of came to the generation after these guys, so had the benefit of Bill really restarted the station, and Bruce, and then and Jeff, and I guess after the comments, I really wanted to go back first of all to Jeff, and I've told this story before. If you were, I think, at Jeff's 50th birthday, probably. So if you were there, sorry, I'm going to tell it again. And if you weren't, it says this is the opportune time to talk about it.
If they weren't, then they'll know they weren't invited.
Oh yeah, well, too bad.
Thanks, Neil.
You're welcome. It was a small little gathering in your backyard. So I showed up at the station in '75 after these guys had just graduated, and I came over the summer and wanted to work at a radio station. I walked in off the street and Mrs. G said, "You should meet Bill Moser, who runs the place." I said, "Hello, Mr. Moser." He said, "Thank you, that's my father." We've all heard that line before. And I said, "I want to do sports." And he said, "Okay, you're the sports director," because there was no Jeff had left. But Phil had left, was sitting over here. So there was nobody else. So he said, "How'd you like to do a sports show every Thursday afternoon or something?" So great. But then I got a letter in the mail. It was sent to the sports director, WCWP. Since there was no one else, it was me. I opened it up and said, "We'd love to take advantage of your football play-by-play and do a simulcast to, I think it was Ashland College, when you do the home game, because we don't send our guys all the way out. We have a commercial station. We'd like to do a simulcast. Would you mind doing it?"
Yeah, they're out in Ohio. It's too far from them.
So I walked into Bill and I said, how do we do this? I'd love to do a football game. I really came here to do sports. What do you think? He said, "You should call this guy, Jeff Kroll." So I went to some of the other folks over at the station. I said, "Bill said to call Jeff Kroll. Do you know him?" "Oh, you don't want to call him." But I
heard the same story.
they warned you too, huh?
I didn't.
Look what happened to both of us, right? So I was kind of torn between, you were the bad cop and you were the good cop. They told me to call the bad cop, so I was torn because I really wanted to do a football game. So I called the bad cop, who immediately said, "I'll be right over." And Jeff drove over, said, "Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. We have all the equipment. I'll do the game with you. We can pick a couple more. I'll show you how to do a football game." And we did it. And I didn't do much of it. It was pretty clear when we got paid by the commercial radio station who sent us each a check. I got $5, Jeff got 10. I had no idea what I was doing. First game I think I ever did. So,
well, I felt sorry for him. He calls me up. The first thing I did was laugh because I'm the new sports director of WCWP. Really? You walked in and became sports director. It's pretty good. I graduated. I was working overnights, and it was something we were talking on the phone, and I started to feel sorry for him. He had said okay to this commercial station in Ohio that he was going to do this game. He'd never done a game. How are you going to do this? Who are you doing the game with? I don't know anybody here yet. I said, "All right, come over. I'll show you the equipment." And we got to talking. I thought, well, I get out of work at about 11 o'clock Saturday morning. I could do without sleep one night. That's all right. I'll come out and we'll do the game. And we had a good time. And I actually changed my schedule by a night so that I could get Friday nights off, so that I'd be a little clear-headed on Saturdays. And we did the games, and we've been close buddies ever since.
And fast forward, just did our 40th anniversary football broadcast this past year. So it's been great. Just want to congratulate both of you guys. You guys both mentors certainly to me, and I think a lot of people around here would say that. We came in the next generation. You guys set the standard very high. And while I didn't go into media at all in my career, I was a finance major, and this was just supposed to be fun. I could never do what I'm doing now had I not learned from you two guys, from Bill, and a whole bunch of others, Joel, etc., Phil. You learn a lot. It doesn't have to be about radio. You learn a lot about how to run things, how to prepare for things, how to be ready when things don't go exactly as planned, and you'll learn a lot about picking the right people to be close to for the rest of your life. So congratulations to both of you.
First of all, thank you for doing that so I could get my wits back together. And I know that story, but it's so true. Thank you for everything you said. I came in, okay, well, I was just telling Tara the story today, actually. I originally came in after reading an article in the Post-Pioneer. I was sitting in, I don't know, Commons or whatever it was called at the time, a white building where you study or you talk to girls or whatever it is. And I had a copy of the Post-Pioneer, and it was talking about the radio station. I had played in rock bands for years, and I love music, and so this is a way to continue doing that. So I went to this WCWP, and I walked in, and this is before Steve Post and that whole thing. And I was assigned to someone I haven't seen in years, and I know that we've been looking for Rick Cashman forever. But he became a good friend at the time, and I learned a lot from him. I learned how to segue records. And I was all set to do my first AM carrier current radio show, and then he shut down. Never did, but I did get to sleep in that big studio for 2 nights. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of, happy to be there. I left when it was time to go to class. And I came back when the station started to rebuild itself. And I walked in the door, and the first person I ran into was Bill Moser. Thank God. And he kind of told me, this is what we do. If you're interested, walk around, look, talk to people, do what you want to do. I met Frank DeLeo. I met Bill Everhart. I met Ted Luckman. I met Mike Riccio. Later on, I met Bernie and I met Bobby. And these people, the knowledge, the things that they were doing. When Jeff said he was following me around, I was lucky because I could follow 5 people, 6 people. And I was just absorbing like a sponge. And I would go in on my own time and practice and edit and do tapes and critique myself and just work harder and harder and harder to get better and better, only because I saw an opportunity. And Jeff and I, in fact, David, had mentioned over at Hofstra, where there was an established school and you had to wait your turn. We were lucky enough to get to Post, and the station was closed down. There was a couple of people, and it was a station to put on the air. I was lucky enough to get on the radio more quickly than had I come to a Hofstra or somewhere else. And I wanted to make sure that if I got there, someone wasn't going to come along and say, you suck, get up. So I tried really hard. And when it came to doing the critiques of other people, you were very kind saying ridiculous. That wasn't the word that was used by a lot of people. I was cruel. I was nasty. And I learned all of that from my pal, Mike Riccio. And he ripped me a couple. How many times were we on the air? We know we did something wrong. Oh, I hope Mike's not. But before you could say this thing, the phone would go. And you knew what it was, and you knew what you did. You already felt bad. You never did it again, because he was a great teacher. I learned from some of the best people out there, and I'm glad I was able to help a little bit. And as Bernie said, family. My friend Jeff Baker is here from NBC. There was a family out there too. He commented to me before when he saw everybody here. He said, this is very cool. You've got another whole family here. Yeah, something a lot of people don't know exists. And I'm just so thrilled that I'm able to be a member of that family. I'm honored to be part of the Hall of Fame and have friends like all of you. Thanks.
Good afternoon, I'm Joel Feldman.
I want to thank Joel. Joel has come up from Florida for this today. It means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
And Jeff have been good friends. Just a comment about your critique. I actually wanted to be in the radio station. I came here as a transfer junior from a college
That went out of business.
that went out of business right now.
Not easy.
I actually closed the university.
Shut it.
Very true. And I told this story on the anniversary broadcast, but I just want to just reiterate it again. I want to be in radio, I want to be in communications, and Post, as it were, at the time did not have a formal official communications program. But I found my way over to the radio station, and I spoke to a gentleman by the name of Bill Moser, who welcomed me with, oh, okay, all right. You need to talk to a guy by the name of Joe Heineken. Actually, I take it back, it was Harry Lowenthal. You told me to talk to Harry Lowenthal. I spoke to Harry Lowenthal, and he told me I need to track down a guy by the name of Joe Heineken. And, who was Joe Heineken? Okay. As it turns out, I'm a political science major, and in one of my classes, the professor called on Joe Heineken, and I saw someone stand up. Ah, this must be the guy. So I ran right up to him and I said, hi, I'm Joel. I would like to, I understand you're a big deal at the radio station. I'd like to get some help coming in. You need to go see guys like Jeff Kroll and Bruce Leonard, but be careful. And that was exactly how we left it. As time progressed, Joe and I also became good friends. We became roommates senior year. And that year was when I started to work at the station as a junior. And you know, you did the standard stuff, and the late night tape shifts, and the NPRs, and all that stuff. And I really wanted to move up, and you talked about moving up. And the year that Joe and I became roommates, he said, all right, enough of these two guys, I'm going to help you get on the air. And so Joe pulled the fast one. He actually decided to get sick on a show that he did, and he said to Jeff, I can't make it tonight, I'm going to send over my roommate. Okay, and they did that. And Bruce and Jeff let me be on the air as a fill-in, and that was a Sunday night. And Monday, in my mailbox in the radio station, there were like 10 sheets of yellow paper. Sure enough, critiques from Mr. Leonard. Don't do this, you back talk that, you didn't give the time, you did the weather, you didn't do the weather right, you did it, and went on and on and on. And you know what? I took that to heart, and I tried to tick off each one of those little critiques and suggestions. I have to say, that he said, that was a great segue. You did really good there. That was terrific. So it wasn't all criticism. And I took that, and I learned from it, and Bruce gave me an opportunity. Jeff and I became good friends. I don't know if you all remember the ice storm of December of '72. Power was out in the Long Island area. Jeff was a commuter. He crashed with me and Joe in our dorm room, and he said, I'm glad I'm not a dorm student. And that became...
That was it.
One night, that was it.
I said, I'm going home to the cold again.
And that was 1972. It is now 2015. That's 43 years. My dad was a very wise man, and he told me that you must choose your friends wisely. And when you choose them, it is your job to nurture and cherish those friendships. And I've done that for 43 years with these two gentlemen, with many of you in the audience. He also said, you choose your friends wisely because we are judged, excuse me, by the company we keep. And for 43 years, I've been proud to call Jeff Kroll my friend.
Dan, you could put a call switch. I mean, come on.
That's it.
Dynamic duo can leave.
Move on? All right. Sure.
Should we just stay for the other guy?
Well, if you want to stay, of course. I think that'd be great. I am honored to be inducting my old friend and classmate, Bobby Guthenberg, also known as Bobby G. Come on up.
My partner in crime.
Good partner.
Jeff, why don't you move down? You guys move down.
Bruce?
You guys move
Bruce?
down.
Yeah, the one you guys do.
It's like the old Carson system.
Exactly. But it's the other way.
You could show up or
No, but it's partner except
Oh, yes.
Yep, so we're...
Bruce, you want to stay? You can stay.
Yeah, Bruce, stay. Just move down.
Move
That's
down?
the old Carson show. You should all be up.
Yeah. We'll do like the new James Corden late night show. Everybody comes out on the couch and
Obviously, these people didn't come to rehearsal, so.
I missed the rehearsal.
Bobby G and I were classmates. I met him in 1970. And we played what was known back then as head music. We were the progressive pioneers at WCWP. In fact, we did the first progressive show audition tape for Mr. McConaughey at the time. And you remember the first song? Oh.
Yeah, that was Neil Young with Cinnamon Girl, and very interestingly, on Sunday, one of our buddies in the radio deal, Riccio gave us credit for doing that on WBAB and WLAO respectively, which I thought was amazing.
I think that, well, first of all, the show was called Freak Flag from Crosby, Stills and Nash, Let My Freak Flag Fly.
Jimi Hendrix.
And Jimi Hendrix. And we thought Bobby was pretty cool, because while he was still a student, he got a job at WLIR.
True.
And part of the reason why he got his job is because his mom used to work in the music store. And he got to interview Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. And for a lot of other people, she should have had a sign-in sheet because the litany of stars that she had come across our desk is quite unbelievable.
And from LIR, you were on the air there for a couple of years. Yeah. You interviewed a lot of people.
I started out doing fill in, somebody didn't show up. Then I happened to see the post, of course, that somebody didn't show up for shift. But that's how I got my foot in the door, and I did some producing on Sunday nights. And I was able to use our contacts as a platform to get guests to come up. Do some of the same things now with some of my buddies, some of the opening acts that are not that famous. Give them my card if they're interested, come up, play in the studio, have a chat, talk on the phone. So that was my opening. Very serendipitous.
And one of the people that we talked about last time, we were just talking about the other day, was Mel Rosen.
Oh,
now,
yes.
there were a lot of Uncle Mel. He did a talk show, and you were part of a prank one night.
Oh, yes, good old Uncle Mel. Uncle Mel, for the people that don't know, was probably a forerunner of Howard Stern, an outrageous personality. And we did live concerts in that big studio. And one night we had a guest go lined up, and we were stiffed. We were, at the last minute told that the person was not going to come up. So we decided to do a tour of the radio station with a live mic. And we went and knocked on Mr. McConaughey's door, who was the director of broadcasting at the time. And you were like 20 college students knocking on the door. Oh, hello, because that's the way he would introduce himself. Oh, hello, And then we went, and we had a UPI machine, which was like a teletype, and you put the microphone like that. And then we turned on the water faucet in the back, and we went to the girls and we flushed the toilet. And we did like a tour of the radio station, which was a lot of fun, but the highlight was at the end, we decided we would describe the transmitter. So Uncle Mel went out with a live mic in about 2-degree weather with snow coming down and a 50-mile-an-hour winds, and we locked them outside.
With a live mic.
And we hear Mel banging on the side door, being asked to be allowed back in. Of course, we weren't going to go back in. And it was quite funny, so we again taped that, and you hear him banging and carrying on. And at the end, I said the WCWP tour of the radio station was live in color. Of course, that makes no sense, but it was fun at the time. Eventually, about 5 minutes after we cut the mic, played some music, we went back in. But that was the type of thing that we did. Bill Moser, of course, was our coordinator years at the time, and frankly, was at school at the time. But those were the shenanigans that we would do late at night, hoping that they were listening.
But they were.
But they weren't.
Yeah, it seems we got busted a couple of times for playing pranks. But, Bobby and I kind of lost touch with each other for a number of years. We got reacquainted at Radio Day a few years ago. And he started coming by the station, so now we're still flying the freak flag on WCWP. We're hosting some progressive rock shows, and we're playing new releases by classic artists that you don't hear on the classic rock stations. We do interviews, we go to a lot of concerts. We don't wait online all night for tickets like we used to, so this is Steve Woodward Thursday night and UK last night. We have Vanilla Fudge and Rascals on Sunday. So I'd like to thank Bobby's wife and his family, we're all here, for their patience and understanding so he can hang out with us once in a while.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's why we want to say thank you to the official thing.
But you know, it's so nice to come back. We actually we lost contact for a while because there was a time with this radio station. Fortunately, I was working in LAR and this whole Steve Post situation went down, which led to the station being off for several months, and then Bill stepped in. And you know, I just want to say that Bill taught me so much about life and being meticulous and doing a good job. I mean, I learned to do a lot of things that I really didn't think I would be able to do. And even as an old guy now, I can do stuff that I surprise my students with because I do still teach school. And I have some of the students that have worked over at St. Francis Prep, which is where I work, come to this radio station. And they're pretty good kids. And if I recommend somebody, I try to look for that Bill Moser model where you really are doing the job you're supposed to be doing. So it's great to be back at those years and having fun. We're back on the air 6 years. WLIU, which was a simulcast for WCWP for a very long time, was sold, and it opened up some time slots that we were invited back, and you know it's been a lot of fun the last 5+ years. We're in our 6th year here, so it's been a lot of fun. And I'm getting to meet some of the people I didn't actually work with, but it really is family. It's a lot of fun.
You've roped us into helping.
Yeah, I know that.
Say you wish you help, but next thing you know, you're on the schedule, Monday.
You're on the schedule. Look who's on tonight. Thanks a lot, guys. You help make my job a lot easier.
Bobby G into the class of 2015 for the WCWP Hall of Fame.
I'm a lot taller than Bernie.
Maybe
Step down. Try to come down. Yeah, Bobby, too.
yeah, if I stay here and Bobby stays there, we'll do it.
All right.
Height now.
You ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Good.
Good. Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Where am I supposed to put it?
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I'm going to hand this off to one of my family members. Bertie?
I think he wants to come here.
You can come up.
So, everybody can stay as we call up another one of our classmates, Mike Riccio.
Before you start, I just want to say, Mike, you know, Mike is known as Mr. Countdown guy around the station. He's always been like that. The numbers freak with the songs and the dates and everything. And the way this kind of worked out, you're not last up here. It's a countdown. And so you're number one. Number one always. There.
This was my old buddy for 47 years, Mr. Mike Riccio. And Mike and I go back, I guess, 1968 together, right? At the time, I think I was a coordinating engineer, learned how to do things. I'm kind of mechanically declined, but I've learned. And sometimes it's a vacuum, and you have to step in and learn to do things. And a little bit later on, I became program director once again there was a vacuum. And this gentleman here became my music director. And I thought I knew a lot about music until I met Mike. And then I felt like a big dumbbell. Because Mike will tell you what position a particular song reached in a particular week, at a particular time, and how many weeks it was on the chart. And he was quite an asset to me because we were putting together a station that was an alternative to what was available on the commercial stations. When Mike was on the air, we would have, and this is true, about 2,000 people call in to request different songs, and we had 3 phones, and it was virtually very, very difficult to get the information back and forth about what people wanted to hear. And it was quite a very, very interesting time to have a chance to actually reach out to an audience before all this technology that we now have exists rather. So we would get letters sometimes, and we would have all kinds of opportunities to play some type of music before it actually hit the charts. So we were like on the cutting edge of some of the new acts that were with Mike's Magic Years. Because not only did he know the charts very well, but he knew what was a potential hit. He had the magic ears, where we listen to an album and say, Mike, what do you think of this? Does this sound any good? And he would give you his true opinion. And he basically put together the format for a very successful college radio station. And it was my pleasure to have him as my right-hand man. And we would go back and forth. And we would sneak in the progressive rock cuts that annoyed him immensely. And Mike and I shared like about 3/4 of the music we liked together. But there was this 1/4 of the music where we differed. It's kind of like an overlap. So like on the one side, he might have music, which I'm probably not going to play very often. And on the other side, I would have Jimi Hendrix, which he's not going to play very often. But we had this big common area together that we liked.
I can never get you to play the short version and out of the beat.
No.
Still don't forget it.
Well, Bill Moser knows that if people put on Indicata Vita, you still had time to take your car and drive up to Burger King, let the turntable go, and then hopefully get back before the record was over.
Which Bobby actually did. Oh, he really did.
And it was against Mike's format. Mike had format rules. So song, fast song, particular type of genre. And for some reason, yeah, I forgot we had a format, but it was very, very successful. And to his chagrin, we would deliberately not follow formatted times just to see if we could, stir him up a little bit. So we had a great deal of fun with Mike with that. And Mike and I had the privilege of going up to WABC because Bill Moser worked over there. He was a big hotshot at WABC and worked with all the big-time disc jockeys, Cousin Brucey and Dan Ingram and all these guys that we were accomplishing. And we were treated very, very nicely. And the guy who ran WABC was Rick Scar. And Mike knew so much about the surveys and stuff that he was told that he actually put together end-of-the-year surveys that were more accurate than the official WABC surveys because Michael waited until the entire year was done before he formulated his results. Now, in case you don't know, Michael runs an oldiesboard.com, and you have over 2,000 hits since you instituted it. 2 million. I'm fine.
2 million.
I have the zeros. I was just going to
I'll forgive you for your
right. 2 million hits on that. And he's been involved with Rewound Radio as well. And he does a program as part of the rock show with Bernie and myself, and these gentlemen here. And it's been a lot of fun with his different countdowns that he does. It's impossible to actually figure out what the correct answer is, and he does it to me on the air all the time, for any of his questions. So I want to get a little bit even. Jeff, would you mind, there's a little beat yeah, thing over there. It's my turn. So what I've done is I went to Record Day last Saturday, a week ago, and there's only certain times you can get certain records and stuff like that, but I did purchase this for you, Michael. This is a complete transcript of everything the Beatles ever said on the BBC. Now it's sealed. Whatever there isn't sealed. So what's on page 317 in the 5th paragraph?
317 in the 5th paragraph is where they talk about their last concert at City Stadium in 1966.
We don't really know what's going on.
Right.
But this
you won't, because I'm not going to look it up.
But this is what I mean. So I hope you enjoy it. And then there will be, I told you when we were informally talking before that there would be a quiz, because I'm a school teacher, so you'll get a chance to study for at least 7 or 8 minutes before I ask my next question. So in all seriousness aside, Michael's also worked in commercial radio at the WBLI, and then later at WLAX. And he has a current career now in real estate. He's one of a handful, a tiny percentage of people who won a lifetime achievement in real estate. As a Riccio company had thousands and thousands of people, not got that part, got a million part one the other. Not in the millions, but in the thousands. So he's an accomplished, very conscientious person. And we get along. Except when we're on the air together for the rally. We have a great deal of fun, and that's part of the nonsense that we did. We did some stuff for the 50th anniversary, and we fought each other while we're on the air. But it's been a pleasure all these years to have worked with you, and now get the chance to sit in together and do some of these programs together when we go back. So I am proud to induct this gentleman to my right, Mr. Michael Riccio, into the 2015 WCWP Hall of Fame, and I am also a member of the class of 2015. Boy, does that sound good. It makes me feel young, doesn't it, gentlemen? So 2015, You want more pictures?
Okay. Over here first.
All right.
1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Good.
All right, good.
Got it.
All right.
Over there. Oh, guys?
Good, sir.
Guys?
Right, get some more over here.
Over here.
Okay.
Right, one more round.
All right. And now the rebuttal.
Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. I know that Bruce and Jeff had mentioned how I worked with them when they were doing the format. And I just want to mention, I don't know if you realized when they had their notes, how they opened and unfolded, long pages. These are my notes. But I want to let you guys know you're still not following format. Yeah, when I first got the notification that I was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, my attitude was almost like quizzical, like why? What did I do? To me, it was always just a matter of doing what was natural for the good of the station, and for me too, to learn there. When I got there to the station, a few of us have mentioned how it really was a training ground for a lot of different formats. Top 40 format, the progressive format. We didn't get into it too much with Danny Frank with his news and his talk shows, political shows. Really Danny Frank with the news department, right, Frank? Back then, did a tremendous job, and of course, Bill kept it all together. When I got there, the music department was kind of a mess because there were records all over the place. Whatever wasn't taken or stolen was left there. Nothing was in order. And got to the point where, to try to give you an idea of the impact of the station, Bernie and Bobby spoke about the progressive side, but it got to the point where we actually would have not only the music before a lot of the other stations did, but we'd have the record promotion guys coming over to the station, would actually delivering the records, trying to get us to play those records. I would make phone calls to various stores and come up with an accurate survey that would publish. We'd give out at the stores and actually look like what you might get from WABC or later on from WPLJ. And the same thing with the on-the-air situation. Just trying to do something that would be the discipline that I knew would be needed because I got involved with WBLI and their formats, and all of them with WABC knowing their formats. For the people who wanted to learn the top 40 side, I felt great. I'll do the best that I can to help them along with that. Once we had the great divide, of course, with the Steve Post and the station closing down for a while, I was very honored when Bill asked me if I could be one of the people that could try to get things back together and pick up the pieces. And despite my critiques, I felt very comfortable kind of handing it over, knowing that these guys would be taking it over from where I did. They could only just learn the format then. So they did a tremendous job. And yet, Bobby touched on this, but the scope, to give you an idea of the kind of audience we had, it felt like the signal went on forever. because literally I would be on Saturday night for a 3-hour show, sometimes a 4-hour block, and we would do what we call either the battle of the bands or the battle of the songs. We'd pick a song, hit it against another one, remember that, Bernie? And then play the winner. And then that would be against another one, and then we'd play the winner of that. This would go on until we had an ultimate champ. And Bob was not exaggerating. We had 3 phone lines, 299-2626, 299-267, and 626-0880. Those numbers still around? I don't know. They're embedded into my mind because we gave them out so much. But literally we have 3 people manning the phones, non-stop voting. All we do is people get on the phone and say, okay, who you vote for? Who you vote for? Non-stop with that stuff. And it was just amazing because we would really log between 1,000 and 2,000 calls. It was just incredible on a Saturday night. That's the kind of reach that the station had and the kind of power that it had. So it helped me along in the commercial radio business when we got into that. I owe tremendous debt to Bill, and I wanted to see you here today, Bill. Thank you. And to Dan, also, who I really feel has followed in Bill's footsteps, and the station couldn't be in better hands. I have so much respect for Dan also. But I really am thrilled and humbled to get this whole thing, such a, not only a small overall group, but with the guys that are here today, it's probably 40 people that I would choose to be here with the most, along with Bernie sitting right here, who also got me back involved when we had the alumni doing shows again. So I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate all you guys coming down here. This means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to mention some of those crazy edits that you used to make. The Bill Withers song, and I know, went on for 2
Ain't No
minutes.
Sunshine.
Yeah, Ain't No Sunshine.
And I'm still doing it now. Just don't tell me.
What's the one you're talking about last time?
There's a version of Milo that's about 23 seconds because it's not one of Mike's favorites.
Not that I record this, was one of these favorite songs. I have to play it on my countdown. So I do have a 23-second version of that song.
The insert and tiny yellow ribbon that went on for about 2 minutes also. We just repeated. But this was, before the digital age. I mean, grease pencils and razor blades and tapes.
And it's funny because just the other day, cleaning out a whole box of things that I came across, I found the editing tape, the razor blades, the editing block, and that white tape we used to use. And I remember 5 or 6 years ago, when everyone wasn't starting getting involved back up here, and I'm looking at Bernie and I'm thinking, how do we edit now, Bernie? I said, no real serious, I want to edit this stuff. Never thought I could learn this stuff, and now I look forward to doing it to make sure nobody can hear really edit this. Still, if you listen carefully, you'll still hear those long, strange versions or short versions when I do the show on Fridays once a month or whatever.
Anybody else have any other comments to make here?
Yeah.
All right.
You think you got notes, Mike? Here we go.
Yeah. Here come the suspensions.
You're all suspended in 2 weeks.
Beyond that, 4 weeks or years.
Yes, everybody's been suspended.
Who the hell are you?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bruce Jenner. I've taken this opportunity to, after 50 years of holding this in, I have to admit publicly now that my career, my broadcasting career, really started as a result of WVHC, not WCWP. I got a phone call one day. Coffee just killed me. I got a call one day from Teddy Ronenberger over at WVHC, the Hofstra station. And Teddy said, we have a problem over here. Our transmitter's down. We understand you have the same final tube. And he said, is there any possibility we could come over and get it? I said, sure, come on over. And Ted came over with George Berger, the late George Berger. And it started a relationship with WVHC that lasted for a real long time. They were so incredibly grateful that we were able to share some of our resources. here at Post with the Hofstra radio station. I was essentially the equivalent of Jeff Krause over at WVHC. Jeff and I had, I think, different ideas about programming a radio station. Jeff was a pipe-smoking, tweed jacket, ascot, stentorian, and the Hofstra station actually was quite successful for many, many years in doing radio, local radio programs. We had a different approach here at Post. But the relationship between WVHC and WCWP was like this. And we were fortunate to have a lot of equipment here. At any time George or Teddy called and said, is there anything we can do to help you guys out? And I said, hey, you know, the shop is open, come on over and help yourself. Subsequently, I got a call from George Berger, who had graduated from WVHC experience, and he went on to WABC. And at that time, I was working for WTFM on the Long Island Expressway. And George said, I got to talk to him. So George came in one day. He said, Billy, he said, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm an engineer, an assistant chief engineer, you know, 2 people in the engineering department. I was also the production manager there. And he said, there's an opening at WABC radio. He said, come on up and join us. And that was in 1969. It was just before whatever that thing is, equal opportunity or something, where white males, that was the last year the white males were able to be hired in corporations like ABC. And George introduced me to Win Lloyd at WABC, and Win hired me. And I spent 20 years at WABC. Well, 15 years at WABC and 5 years at Radio Network. But all that was because of friends they had made at WVHC. So I thank those guys over there. George passed away a few years back. He was an extraordinarily bright person. Mark Wiener's another name from the WVHC experience, and Mark went on to work at CBS FM for many years, and then eventually CBS TV. And Mark is still over there in the engineering area at the Hofstra television facility. So there it is, folks. WVHC started my career. WCWP started these guys' career, and this is an amazing process. Dan was so this is the 4th year we've been doing this, and it really is amazing. It's a family. The marriages as a result of this experience at WCWP and the friendships that lasted year after year after year, truly amazing. And again, people say, you know, you did this and did that. I said, I just provided the opportunity for smart people to do what they were best at doing. So, congratulations, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Bobby. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Jeffrey. All right. Can I go back to changing my clothes now?
Wanted to remind everybody that The Rock Show airs Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. And it's staffed by alumni. Bobby, Mike, Jeff, Bruce and I are there. Anybody else, come on, join in. We really need more people to fill the shift, so if you're interested, we'll give you a chance to get acquainted with the board and the digital audio database. You can plug in your laptop or bring your own CDs. You can start co-hosting on your board, flying solo, or doing the weather, like JL Slide and Joe Honorkamp, who often phones it in. So we have a lot of fun doing real radio again. We've done some interviews with people who brought in musicians to play live. So get in touch with your Bobby if you're interested. And you know, the alumni are, you know, we're still on the air. They're doing their own show. I think Frank wanted to say something before we wrap up.
I feel very close to this class because these 2 guys are my compatriots. We had a lot of fun together in the same days. I do remember a weekend, I think we went away with your big gold or whatever color it was, Cadillac convertible. He had a big Caddy convertible. And we went out to the island, I think. I think it was the 3 of us and Chuck Arabia. And that's the only memory of that I have, so I don't know if that's good or bad. Or in the corner, yeah.
By the way, this is Frank DeLita, who is a member of the WCWP Hall of Fame class of 2014.
I remember playing miniature golf when it was too cold with Mike on some nights. We were part of that group just hung around the radio station all the time. We were there almost more than we were in these buildings over here where we supposedly were getting an education. And I remember being, and I remember being very jealous of these two guys too because they had real jobs in real radio stations. And it was pretty special to me back then to be doing that, I thought. And I remember hanging around with them once in a while, and if you were lucky, you got to go to the radio station with them. These two guys, I remember as two of the Three Musketeers. Joe Honnerkamp's the third one I remember. They were the young guys that showed up. I'm sitting with Bill, my guy's coughing. They were the next generation, and it was a very interesting thing to see them come about and learn some of the things that we learned. And I guess we were helpful, but we were at the same time a little bit of SOBs, I guess, sometimes. But Jeff has told me a story that I don't remember where I just told him, pay attention because next week you're doing this by yourself.
It's a true story.
I have no recollection of that. And, you know, what everybody said about this being a family, it is, and I think a wonderful part of it is that thing that our kids have now abandoned, but those of us who are a little older have latched onto. There's no cough button. And that is Facebook. And we get to see each other's lives and our families and everything. And it's wonderful to be able to come back to something like this and be able to see those people that you knew 40-something years ago when Bruce had more hair, when Joe had more hair. I think I looked about the same back then. I didn't have any more hair than I needed, so congratulations to 4 of my friends.
You know, I latched on to Bruce, as I mentioned in my remarks, but the first day of classes when I was a freshman, when I walked in, Frank was still the news director. I think he was starting to get out of that position, working his way out and handing that off. But I said I wanted to do news, and Frank ripped off a piece of copy from the EPI machine he had in the station. He said, "You want to do news? Here, read this." Here's a copy. I read that. He says, "That's pretty good. What are you doing tonight? Would you like to come back to a 1-minute newscast?" I mean, that's kind of the way the place went back then, and I was on the air that night. Did 1 minute, he called after that and said, "That was very good. Can you hang around till 10 and do the 5-minute update after that?" And there you go. I was in. Basically, you know, Bill was very modest when he said he just created just an atmosphere. There was a lot of structure to it, and it allowed us all to flourish. But the thing was, they weren't afraid to drop you into the deep end of the pool and see if you could swim. And I did. You did. Well, you did. So we did all right, and we really thankfully. And just a couple of comments about Mike, if I may. Mike is one of those people, and I've heard this about me in later years too. When I was starting to get involved in the music shows, you had to send audition tapes through Mike. Bruce hadn't got to the audition tape part yet. He was still more or less, well, you were ahead of me, but you
I was recording.
So you had to leave tapes for Mike. But Mike was one of these people, I had never met Mike. Mike was this person that I knew of him. He would critique my audition tapes. He would put dates on the back of albums. We'd leave albums for him to put the dates and survey numbers of songs and things like that. These things would just mysteriously happen in the middle of the night. You'd come back the next day, everything was done. The tape was critiqued, everything was in your mailbox. The albums were all not only numbered, they were put back meticulously where they belong. Everything, but it was a long time before I actually got to meet you face to face. We keep talking on the phone, but face to face.
I really didn't exist back then. Bobby was doing both of them.
And one of the, talk about all the people that called in, when I started doing music shows, the shifts were up to 5 hours at that point. You're in there all by yourself. How did you get all that phone help to answer the phones? Because I had nobody.
People come in after each one.
I had nobody. So we kept getting these requests, and you wanted every request written down Get pages of requests every night. I'm there all by myself, 5 hours. I'm still new at this thing. I'm still trying to break in. I'm trying. If I screw up the format, the phone's going to ring and it's going to be mine. I'm trying to stay in line. I'm trying to take down these requests. I'm trying to actually play some of these requests because I really feel bad. These people took the time to call in. I should work them in. But at what point in the format is it proper to play this particular song? And at what point in the format is it proper to play that particular song? It was tough. It was really tough.
I was not controlling at all, right?
It's too popular.
Right, it's called tough love.
Yes,
There have been times when I was doing this, even when I went on to my professional career, where I was doing something and I didn't know exactly why I got to do this, and I had to stop and think because that's the way I was taught, whether it was by Bill or by Mike, and somebody asked me why you're doing this, I really couldn't explain it. Just you learned how. So you're kind of in my head even to this day. Whether it's good or bad, I'm not quite sure.
All right, very good.
Bill's got
You forgot to hand out the suspensions.
Now this bag will win again. I can't begin to tell you how grateful I am that Jeff and Pat take you over to the WCWP Alumni Association. Big round of applause. At our dinner a few months back, Larry Brodsky came to me and said, "I've got a box of tapes." He said, "I want to give them to the radio station so I can put them into the digital format." And I said, "But Larry, they don't have real recorders over there." And Larry said, "What do you mean they don't have real recorders?" I said, "Larry, real recorders went out of radio stations 20 years ago." And he kept on insisting, "But they must have a tape recorder there." I said, "Larry, they're gone." But he gave me this box of tapes, and I'm the president of the Long Island Radio and TV Historical Society, and we partnered with WCWP. We purchased an Atari reel-to-reel machine, and I have a digital system set up where I can transfer some of those old tapes that hopefully you might have in your drawers and closets and trunks. J.L's wife travels around with a whole trunk full of tapes. But if anyone in this group has some old air checks, even memorabilia that you can photograph and share with the Alumni Association, we're building a collection of the history of WCWP through graphics and through audio tapes. Larry gave me a tape. He was on here at WLIX also. What was his name? It was really funny to hear ourselves 20, 30, 40 years ago on the radio. So if you have tapes, get them to Dan. Dan will get them to me. I'll transfer them. I'll get them back to you, and then we'll put them up in a manner in which anybody can listen to them or download them. So thanks again to Jeff and Pat for their great work on these events.
I would like to take a moment to acknowledge some of our alumni who are part of the legacy of WCWP, but are no longer with us. Founders, Professor Virgil Jackson Lee and Dr. Bert Costin, Mike Snyder, Bill Eberhardt, longtime station secretary Ann Gaffney, Kevin Jeffries, Cindy Krudick-Panello, and a great supporter of WCWP who we lost this past year, Warren Wilson. So we do remember that. Speaking of the legacy of WCWP, we have somebody who is carrying that on and who's making sure that our network stays together. And by his good graces, we are allowed to play with his radio station. So Dan Cox has some closing remarks. Dead air, you want to come?
Dead air, I know, dead air. Now, I'd like to get the signatures of the inductees on one of these. I had a pen, but I couldn't find it. You guys could please just sign it for me? I keep them in my office. Okay. Lean on your folder there, Carl. I love this day. Every year I look forward to it. Not because we're honoring these guys, they deserve it, that's fine. But because I get to see all of you, the families and the friends of our honorees. because you are the backbone that made them do what they do every day. And I wanted to mention a couple things. Bobby mentioned 6 years ago that he came back with Bernie and a few others to do the rock show. Short history lesson of WCWP. From its existence until 1990, from 1961 until 1990, the FM was a community radio station that served the North Shore here of Long Island. In 1990, the university made a decision, and they linked us with WLIU, our station in Southampton, and we basically became a repeater. For many of the alumni, that was a very dark time. They didn't get along with the university at that time. There was controversy. It was awful. And it wasn't, and you weren't very supportive. Joel's nodding his head. I know, I heard some of your diatribes back in the day. When I came here 13 years ago to take this full-time job, it's only because I told Bill Moser I'd eventually have his job when I was a student. And I do have his job. But it was my intention that when the university finally came to its senses, I'm going to get in trouble, some university officers are here today, and sell WLIU, which they did in 2008 and 2009, that we become the community radio station that we once were. And that was a difficult task, because radio had changed a lot in the 20 years. But I knew that if I reestablished the way things were done before 1990, during the 20 years that Bill Moser had been boss and my mentor as a student, I knew if I could do that, we'd come back to greatness, the greatness that I know we are. And the other part of that was I had to reestablish that connection with these people, with the alumni who had been so passionate about WCWP, the ones that had built the building in that first year of honorees, the people who ran the building, which was in the second year of honorees, the people who put us on the map as individuals in the industry as we did last year. And this year, we honor people who have come back to WCWP. Everyone you see on stage here, including Bernie, who was inducted last year, has a shift, does a show on WCWP again, like they did when they were students. Why? I don't really know. It's not the pay, because I pay them nothing. I know what it is. It's the love of the game, my friends. And in a country that values money over everything else, the love of the game will always be part of WCWP, because as has been stated more than once today, we are not just individuals, we're family. And we've always been family for this 50 years. And I am proud to be in that office as the caretaker of a legacy that was built on the shoulders of these gentlemen here, and I'm honored to be in your presence. Bravo! Everybody, I can change, it's funny about the reel-to-reel bill. I can change the technology, I can update the systems, but I can't change the heart that beats in that place. Because the way we did things, and no offense to Hofstra, which, by the way, one of the people who run Hofstra right now was a colleague of mine here at WCWP, and is a postgraduate who runs the Hofstra station. So we have that connection still, though. And it's WRHU now, they changed their Kroll. What we can change about this place is that we are family, that we're all together, and I just love coming here every April when the flowers start to bloom and the sun comes out, although it didn't feel like winter yesterday, and seeing all of you here. So please come visit the station after you're done here. There's a really nice cake that the Alumni Association has brought for us today. You okay, sweetie? And with my heart and my love for all of you, thank you for being here today.
Sitting here, be careful when you volunteer to do something now at the station, because you volunteer to do one thing and the next thing you know,
you're doing baseball, baby.
You're doing baseball, 35-mile-an-hour winds.
Jeff, what did Pacino say in The Godfather 3? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
That's it. I guess that's it. Thank you all.
Well, we would like to thank Bernie Bernard, Hall of Fame member herself, remain such. So thank you so much for taking the moderator's chair today.
Thank you.
Very good. And Zach Parker still here? Zach with the audio and all thing. Our buddy Zach. Dan, and we really thank Dan too. You know, Dan's thanking us. We thank Dan very much. Dan was the driving inspiration behind setting up this Hall of Fame. You know, it took 50 years pretty much to get this thing going, and so we're still making up ground from some of the folks. But thank you, Dan. We appreciate it very much.
One person also I'd like to acknowledge who has been doing the show on WCWP for 30, how many years?
34 years.
34 years, grandfather Ron, Chris McIntosh.
About another 2 weeks, we'll be ready for air. You know, the practice sessions. We almost like to review the selections.
Okay.
So you guys have to cut the cake now.
Oh, yeah. We got
Oh,
the
right.
cake.
Yes, there is a cake. Everyone's, please take part.
I got
We're going to have a cake cutting ceremony next.
Average white man looking for something.
I hear Kate. I'm sorry.